This is a brief, hopefully brief, overview of the medical healthcare ethics syllabus. So the main thing I want to talk about are the course assignments, the requirements, the things you have to complete in order to finish the class. And you can see that I have them set up in 5 categories, which are on your screen. So the first thing we'll talk about are the quizzes, and you can see that we will have 12 of them, and the content of each quiz is listed up there. They're in 2 blocks. The first block of quizzes feeds into the midterm and is practice for the midterm, and the second feeds into the final and is practice for the final. So the most important thing you need to know about these quizzes is that they can be taken multiple times and only the highest score counts. So take them as a pre-test, take them as a post-test, take them as a practice, get familiar with them, get confident with them. There'll be 10 questions taken out of a pool of probably, a couple dozen, maybe more, and they'll sequence around. So every time you take it, it'll be slightly different, and it'll give you the chance to practice for the midterm. The main point of the quizzes is to give you a chance to show your knowledge of the important concepts and ideas and a few of the important figures of the field. So the second category is the midterm and the final. They're very similar to the quizzes, only longer. They'll cover much of the same material. But one important difference is that you cannot take them multiple times and only one time each. And there'll be a couple essay questions added. So the dates are in your syllabi. I give 2 days to complete them in case there's some kind of conflict in time. And that is the midterm and the final. So the next thing we'll talk about are the weekly assignments. And I have to make one correction. It says up there that they're due on Tuesday. They're actually due on Wednesday nights. These weekly assignments are all going to revolve around a specific topic, or perhaps a better way to describe it would be case study that you'll be picking off of a list that is also going to be available in D2L shortly under course content. So the idea is to get you to spend a lot of time with one topic and to be kind of become like the class expert on that particular topic. So after you pick your topic, you'll be doing a little thing every week. The second time you hand something in, it will be a list of a couple articles on your topic that you're going to be reading. Then you'll briefly summarize those articles. Later in the semester, you get a chance to develop a survey of like 5 questions to ask your friends or your family over Thanksgiving week to get their opinion. So they're little things, but they build up into some deeper understanding of the topic. And that is the weekly assignments. Next, we have the final project, which is kind of like the accumulation of all those weekly assignments. And the idea behind the final project is to take all that information you've learned about your case study or your topic and to apply it, to take it a little bit further and do something interesting and perhaps creative with it, although it doesn't have to have something creative. It could be a traditional short paper of 3 to 4 pages. So in this final project, you're going to focus on answering one question. And that question is, what is going to happen in the future? Specifically about your topic, of course, not just in general. So I'm asking you to speculate, to think, where are we headed? Now, the interesting thing in ethics is that you realize when you look at the history of the world that our ethical understandings have advanced, they've changed, they've progressed. And that's true. It seems very likely that there are some things that right now we think we're correct about that we might be wrong about. So it's always interesting to think about how people will perceive some of the same issues we have confronting us today in the future. So I'm inviting you to take your topic and do that. So here are some of the questions you might want to think about. Are the laws going to be different in the future with regard to your topic? Will the practices be different? Will there be new technologies that will kind of mess with the topic and change how the topic is handled? And all those questions you can feed into a project, which it could be a traditional short paper or it could be something a lot more creative. So what I'm going to suggest is you consider some of the possibilities. I've had a student do something in a similar class in the past where they developed a PowerPoint presentation as if they were a visitor from the future. Well, as if they were in a conference in the future discussing the past, which is our future of the issue. And he did things like came up with futuristic Supreme Court decisions that haven't yet happened, but they were fictional Supreme Court decisions. And that's what I mean by creative. So there are many possible things you can do with this. You could write a short story. You could do a fictional news account of some event that will happen in the future. I do ask that you create something for presentation to the class. This is kind of a presentation assignment. But it could be a paper that you share with the class inside D2L, or it could be a PowerPoint that you share with the class in D2L, or it could be something else that you share. So all of those are possible options. And finally, our last thing that we need to discuss is class participation. In an online class, the way that class participation takes place is in the discussion boards, and people have already started, which is exciting. So the key thing I want to tell you is that class participation is the only way to get to extra credit. So the way to get to extra credit is to participate in all the discussion boards every 2 weeks. And then when you go beyond the discussion boards, in responding to each other, fellow students, making comments, getting involved in discussion, giving us a sense that we're in a class and we're collaborating together, then that's when you get the extra credit. And I will not always step in and make a comment on every post. I do that at the beginning to introduce myself, but studies show that sometimes that can stop students from posting, so I will not continue to always do that. And here's how the grade will be computed. It will be 20% for the quizzes, 10% each for the midterm and the final, which is equivalent together to all the quizzes, 20% for the weekly assignments, 20% for the class project, and for class participation or the discussion boards, an additional 20%. So my makeup and late policy is very important to be aware of. I try very hard to be fair and to have a policy that will work so I can be completely consistent, and so I will be completely consistent, I can guarantee that. The quizzes, I have 2 due dates, the midterm and the final. Because I give you multiple weeks to take all the quizzes, I don't feel a need to allow makeups for any of them, even if there's some kind of circumstance like power outages or the dorms have a problem with getting into the internet. So make sure you take them ahead of time, way before they're due. A week before they're due, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and get a number in there. The midterm and the final, I'll allow makeups with some form of documentation of a serious need to be absent during that 2-day period, or if there's some kind of serious conflict going on, please email me and let me know. The weekly assignments, I have a very simple policy. I allow 2 to be late without any explanation. But you should use those only for when you have a problem like a power outage, because a power outage won't be an excuse after the 2. So save those for a real need, and maybe possibly you won't need to use them at all. Any additional late papers, it's 50% off without any question. So that's a pretty substantial penalty, which is why you only want to have 2 late, and you should delay them towards later in the semester. The project is due last week, so there's not a lot of room to be late, but if it is late, because there is a week or so, then I'll take a certain number of points off each day. And class participation has to be every 2 weeks, because in other words, there's no participation because other people are not on that discussion board anymore, so there will be no exceptions there. So here are the policies that are relevant to an online class. There aren't that many because I don't have to worry, for instance, about the phones. But the policies that are important are that I put everything through Turnitin. So be very careful to ensure that if you're using your sources, that you paraphrase clearly all the material that you are using, or that you use quote marks, and that you adequately cite your sources. This is something you focus a lot of attention on, specifically on the issue of paraphrasing, because we work with a lot of sources and students sometimes aren't quite sure exactly how to make sure they're adequately paraphrasing. So I will make Turnitin available to you so you can see your paraphrasing as because that can be a learning thing for you as well. Email is the best way to contact me. I generally respond within 24 hours. In D2L, you can direct message, but I never seem to know that I am being direct message, so it's better just to email me. I'll get it faster. And the other thing I would just suggest is that you do put aside some focused time. It's true when you're at home, you could be distracted by something, but it's best to focus. And now I'm going to talk briefly about the topics. So the list should be available to you in D2L under course content. Go to the list, pick out the 5 topics that interest you the most, and rank them for me. That's next week's assignment. I'm going to go through and use a random process of drawing names to see who gets their first pick. And hopefully most of you or everyone will get their first pick. But if your first pick has already been picked, then I'm going to go to your second pick. That's why I ask you to pick 5. So the topics, as I said, are specific case studies. Specific case studies are interesting because they force you to make a decision. And also because they're like stories, they're like tales, they're narratives. So I'm hoping that you'll find one that really interests you and that you can live with the entire semester. So carefully consider before you make a commitment, since you're sticking with it the rest of the time.